I wasn't supposed to be home until Thursday. That's the thing about life. It never really asks you for permission before it decides to rearrange everything you thought you knew. One canceled flight. One early morning. One decision to surprise the woman I loved. That's all it took. Just a simple twist of fate, a schedule that shifted by 2 days, and suddenly I was standing in the middle of a moment I can never take back, staring at something that would change the entire course of my life forever. My name is Marcus Bennett. I'm 37 years old. I'm a field engineer for an oil and gas company based out of Houston, Texas. And on a quiet Tuesday morning in the middle of what I thought was an ordinary week, I walked through my own front door and discovered that the life I had been working myself half to death to build, the house, the marriage, the future, had been built on something I never agreed to, something I never saw coming, something that was hiding in plain sight the whole time. I landed at 6 o'clock in the morning after catching a red-eye out of Denver. My original flight had been canceled, so I booked the overnight option and didn't bother calling Melissa to let her know. I wanted it to be a surprise. I had this image in my head, walking through the door with my duffel bag over my shoulder, seeing her face light up, maybe pulling her into a hug right there in the hallway, maybe taking her out for a slow breakfast somewhere with good coffee and warm pastries. I had been in the field for 12 straight days. Cold mornings, long hours, a motel room that smelled like old cigarettes and industrial cleaning fluid. I was tired and I was ready to come home. I grabbed an Uber from the airport. The city was just waking up. Sprinklers were turning on automatically along the residential streets. A few early commuters were backing out of driveways, coffee cups in hand, radios humming. The neighborhood felt peaceful, normal, the kind of quiet that makes you exhale and think, yes, this is exactly what I needed. We pulled up to our house at 7:15 in the morning. A 2-story colonial with blue shutters, a neat front lawn, and a life that looked exactly right from the outside. But the first thing I noticed before I even reached the front door was that Melissa's car was in the driveway. That was strange. She always left for work by 7. Always. She was the kind of person who was out the door before most people had even turned off their alarm. So why was her car still sitting there? I told myself it was nothing. Maybe she had a late start. Maybe she was working from home that day. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The air hit me first. It smelled different. Not bad exactly, just wrong. There was a scent layered beneath the familiar fragrance of our home, something deeper, warmer, unmistakably masculine. A men's cologne, rich and heavy, the kind that lingers on fabric long after the person wearing it is gone. My stomach tightened in a way I couldn't fully explain. I tried to shake it off. I set my duffel bag down in the hallway, and that's when I saw them. Her heels, the black ones with the red soles, Louis Vuitton. I had bought those for her on our last anniversary, wrapped them in tissue paper and a white box, and watched her face break into the most genuine smile I had seen from her in months. She only wore those shoes for special occasions, date nights, important dinners, events that mattered. And right next to them, directly beside her heels, was a pair of men's dress shoes. Oxfords, dark leather, expensive craftsmanship. They were not mine. I do not own shoes like that. I wear boots. I always wear boots. These shoes belong to someone else entirely. I stood in my own hallway staring at those 2 pairs of shoes for what felt like a very long time. My brain was working overtime trying to find an explanation, any explanation that didn't end with the world splitting open beneath my feet. Maybe her brother had come by. He doesn't wear Oxfords. Maybe a colleague needed a ride at 7 in the morning. Maybe there was something completely innocent happening that I was too tired and too suspicious to see clearly. Maybe. Then I heard it. The shower running upstairs. I moved without thinking. Up the staircase, 1 step at a time, my hand trailing along the railing. I passed the family photos hanging on the wall our wedding day, that vacation we took to the coast, smiling versions of 2 people who looked happy, who looked like they had everything figured out. I barely registered them. The bedroom door was half open. I pushed it wider and stepped inside. The bed was unmade. The sheets were tangled and pulled to one side. Both pillows had visible indentations, the kind left behind when 2 people have been sleeping there. And on the nightstand, placed side by side like an accusation I hadn't asked for, were 2 wine glasses, both of them half empty, both of them still holding the remnants of a night I had not been part of. One glass had lipstick on the rim, her shade, that deep, confident red she always wore when she wanted to feel beautiful. I knew that color. I had complimented it 100 times. The other glass was clean, no lipstick, no smudge, just wine residue sitting at the bottom. I don't drink wine. I have never drunk wine, not once, not a sip. Melissa had known this since our second date when I ordered whiskey and she had laughed and teased me about being too old-fashioned for anything with a French label. She knew. She had always known. So whose glass was that? If you're watching this for the first time and you want to know exactly what I found next, hit that subscribe button and join our community. Because this story is just getting started, and you will not want to miss a single moment of what came next. The shower was still running. Steam was curling out from beneath the bathroom door. And then in the middle of all that silence and tension and confusion, I heard her humming. That song, the one from that film she loves, the one she always hums when she's in a genuinely good mood. Light and careless and completely unbothered. My hand reached for the bedroom closet. I'm not sure why. Instinct, maybe. Or maybe some part of me already knew and needed the confirmation. I slid the door open. Hanging there, pressed between her dresses like it belonged, was a men's suit jacket. Charcoal gray, expensive fabric, tailored. I reached out and touched the sleeve. It was still warm. I checked the pocket. A wallet. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside, a driver's license from the state of Texas. A face I had never seen before. A name I did not know. Derek Paulson, Dallas, 41 years old. I stared at that license until the letters blurred at the edges. Then the shower shut off. I closed the wallet, put it back exactly where I found it, closed the closet door, and stood very, very still. My heart was hitting my ribs so hard I could feel it in my throat. The bathroom door opened slowly, releasing a wave of warm, humid air into the bedroom, and Melissa stepped out. Towel wrapped around her body, hair dark and wet against her shoulders, skin flushed from the heat, still humming. Then she looked up, and she saw me. The color drained from her face, so quickly it was. Like watching someone turn off a switch. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again, the humming stopped. Marcus, her voice was barely a whisper. Why are you home? Not, oh my goodness, you're back early. Not, I missed you so much. Not even, you scared me half to death. Just, why are you home? Flat and stunned and laced with something that wasn't relief at all. Like I was the one who didn't belong there. Like I was the problem. I pointed at the nightstand. Whose glass is that? She followed my finger, looked at the wine glasses, and I watched my wife of 8 years try to build a lie in real time, watched her eyes moving, calculating, searching for a version of events that could possibly explain away what was sitting right there in front of us both. I had a friend over last night. We were just talking. What friend? Sarah from work, you know Sarah. Sarah is allergic to sulfites, I said. She doesn't drink red wine. Her face twitched just slightly. Right, I meant Jessica. Jessica stopped by. At 7 in the morning. No, last night. She was here last night. I just haven't cleaned up yet. I walked to the nightstand slowly and picked up the glass without the lipstick. I held it up so she could see it clearly. This glass is still wet, Melissa. She stared at it. The condensation is fresh, I continued, my voice low and completely calm in a way that surprised even me. This wine was poured within the last hour. Silence stretched between us like a wire pulled too tight. So I'll ask you one more time, whose glass is that? She opened her mouth, and then we both heard it. A sound from downstairs, the soft click of the front door opening, then closing, then footsteps moving through the hallway below, quiet and careful like someone who was trying very hard not to be heard. Melissa's eyes went wide. I turned and walked out of the bedroom without another word. Marcus, wait. I didn't wait. I went down the stairs deliberately, one step at a time, one hand gripping the railing so tightly my knuckles went white. At the bottom of the staircase, I stopped. There was a man standing in my hallway. Early 40s, charcoal suit, no tie, hair still damp. He was holding his shoes, the Oxfords I had seen by the front door, in his hands, as though he had taken them off to move quietly and had been on his way out before anyone noticed. He looked up, he saw me, he froze. For 3 full silent seconds, nobody moved. Then he said the most remarkable thing. I can explain. I did not raise my voice. I did not move toward him. I didn't do any of the things that were raging inside me like a storm looking for somewhere to land. I simply stood there, looking at this stranger holding his shoes in my hallway, and I said, You have 30 seconds to get out of my house before I call the police. Look, man. 25 seconds. He glanced past me. I didn't need to turn around to know that Melissa had appeared at the top of the stairs in her towel, watching this unfold. Melissa, he started. Don't, my voice dropped to something I barely recognized as my own. Don't say her name, don't look at her, just leave. He hesitated. 15 seconds. He moved, he slipped his shoes on. He reached for his jacket and then stopped. Because his jacket was still upstairs, hanging in my closet, still warm from his body. He realized it at the exact same moment I did. I'll come back for it, he muttered. No, I said, you won't. He looked at me one last time. He opened his mouth like there was something worth saying. Then he thought better of it. The front door opened. The front door closed. He was gone. I stood in the hallway alone, breathing steadily, staring at the closed door. The house was completely silent except for the faint creak of the floorboards above me where Melissa was still standing. Then quietly, Marcus. I turned. She was halfway down the staircase, one hand on the railing, clutching her towel with the other. Her mascara was beginning to smear even though she hadn't been crying yet. Just the heat, just the steam, just the morning catching up with her. How long? I asked. What? How long? My voice carried through the entire house. She swallowed, her chin dropped slightly, and then barely above a whisper she said, 6 months. 6 months. Half a year. While I was in North Dakota, while I was in Colorado, while I was in West Texas, while I was working 16-hour days in bitter cold, living out of motel rooms, missing my wife, counting down the days until I could come home, she was here, with him. Who is he? I asked. My voice was flat now, stripped of everything except the need for information. His name is Derek. He works in sales. We met at a conference. A conference? Marcus, I didn't mean for this to happen. It just did. It just did, I repeated slowly. Like you just accidentally fell into bed with him. Like you just accidentally invited a man into our house, into our bedroom, into our marriage. I was lonely, she burst out. The words came rushing up like they had been sitting under pressure for a very long time. You're never here, Marcus. You're always gone and I'm always alone and I needed. You needed what? Someone. You had someone. My voice cracked at the edges despite everything I was doing to hold it steady. You had a husband, you had a marriage, you had vows. You stood in front of our family and our friends and you made promises and you... I know, tears were streaming down her face now, full, real, ugly tears. I know, Marcus, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. Please, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can... Get out, I said. She stopped mid-sentence. What? Get out of my house. Marcus, this is my house, too. I pulled out my phone. You're right. It is. And I can't legally remove you against your will. But I can call the police and report the trespasser who just walked out my front door and ask them to take a statement while I'm at it. She stared at me. Get dressed, I said quietly. Pack a bag and go. She packed. I stood in the doorway of the bedroom and I watched her move around the room, hands shaking, makeup smearing, still in that towel because she was too unsettled to get fully dressed first. She threw things into a suitcase without folding them. Clothes, toiletries, whatever she could grab quickly. When the suitcase was full, she looked at me one last time. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know, I said honestly. Derek's place, a hotel, your sister's, I genuinely don't care. I really am sorry, Marcus. So am I said, and I meant every word. I was sorry I had trusted blindly. Sorry I had worked myself into exhaustion for a life that turned out to be built on something hollow. Sorry I had told myself the warning signs were paranoia rather than what they actually were. She walked past me, her suitcase wheels making a small squeaking sound on the hardwood floor. At the front door, she stopped one more time and looked back. What happens now? Now, I said, I call a lawyer. The door closed, and I was alone in a house that no longer felt like home. If any part of this story feels familiar to you, if you've ever stood in a moment where the life you thought you had and the life that was actually happening came crashing together, write something in the comments. You are not alone in this. So many people know exactly what this kind of silence feels like. I stood in that hallway for a long time, I'm not sure how long. Long enough for the morning light to shift through the front windows and fall at a different angle across the floor. Long enough to breathe. Long enough to feel the full weight of what had just happened settle into my bones. Then I walked back upstairs. The wine glasses were still sitting on the nightstand exactly where I had left them. I looked at them for a moment. Then I picked them both up and carried them downstairs to the kitchen and dropped them into the trash. I pulled out my phone and called the one person I knew would pick up no matter what. Marcus, my brother's voice was thick with sleep. It's 8 in the morning, what's wrong? I need a lawyer, I said, a good one. There was a pause. What happened? I looked around the kitchen. The coffee maker I had bought Melissa for Christmas. The photos held to the refrigerator with little magnets from places we had visited. The small, careful details of a life I had believed in completely. Everything, I said. My brother gave me a name. Richard Voss, divorce attorney, tough, thorough, and expensive in exactly the way that matters. I called his office at 9 o'clock that morning. Mr. Bennett, his assistant said, Mr. Voss can see you at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Does that work? I'll be there, I said. The 5 hours between that phone call and that appointment passed in a kind of fog I have no better word for. I moved through the house slowly, the way you move through a space when you're seeing it differently for the first time. I opened drawers. I looked at photographs. I retraced the last 6 months in my mind, looking for the exact moment, the exact day, the exact conversation, where everything had started to fracture without me noticing. Was it when I took the job that required so much travel? Was it when we stopped talking about having children? Was it when I noticed the new perfume and said nothing? Was it when the schedule excuses started and I chose to believe them rather than ask harder questions? Or had this been coming for a long time, slowly and quietly, and I had just been too focused, too trusting, too committed to my own version of our life to see it? I didn't have an answer. I'm not sure I ever will. At 2 o'clock, I sat across from Richard Voss in his downtown office. He was in his mid-50s, silver-haired, with sharp eyes that had seen every version of this particular story more times than he could count. He listened without interrupting while I told him everything. The wine glasses, the shoes, the man in the hallway, the name on the driver's license. When I finished, he set down his pen and looked at me directly. Do you want to try to save the marriage? No, I said. He nodded once. Good, that makes this considerably more straightforward. He reached for a legal pad. Texas is a community property state. Everything acquired during the marriage is generally divided 50-50 unless we can establish fault. Adultery constitutes legal fault, but we need documentation. I pulled out my phone and set it on his desk. I had taken photographs before I left the house that morning. The wine glasses, the shoes by the door, the suit jacket in the closet, the wallet open to the driver's license with Derek Paulson's face and his Dallas address. Richard looked through the photos. A slow, small smile crossed his face. This, he said, is very good. What happens now? Now we file. We document everything, bank accounts, assets, liabilities, expenditures. We build a clear picture of what was happening during the marriage, and we argue that your wife should not benefit financially from a union she chose to violate. How long does this take in Texas? 60 days at minimum. If assets are contested, potentially 6 months. 6 months, the same amount of time she had been deceiving me. Let's get started, I said. Over the following 2 weeks, I became a different version of myself, methodical, focused, thorough. I went through every bank statement I could access and found charges I had never seen before. Hotel stays in Dallas on weekends when I had been out of state. Restaurant bills for 2 on evenings I had been on a job site. A second phone account I had never known existed. She had been careless, or perhaps she had simply never imagined she would need to be careful. Richard filed the petition. Melissa was served at her sister's house. She called my phone 17 times that day. I didn't answer once. She sent texts, we need to talk, this is insane, you're overreacting, I made a mistake, people make mistakes, please call me. I read each one. Then I blocked her number. The first mediation session was one of the most uncomfortable hours of my adult life. Melissa arrived with her own attorney, a sharp-featured woman named Patricia Chen who carried herself with the particular confidence of someone who was very good at winning difficult arguments. Mr. Bennett, Patricia said, settling into her seat, My client is prepared to agree to an equal division of all marital assets. A clean break. No alimony, no prolonged dispute. Richard didn't even blink. Your client committed adultery. We have documented evidence. We are not agreeing to an equal split. Patricia's expression remained composed. Adultery is notoriously difficult to prove in a court of law. Richard opened a folder and slid it across the conference table without a word. Photographs, timestamps, bank statements cross-referenced with dates, hotel records. Patricia opened the folder. Her expression changed. Melissa, sitting across from me, looked at the photographs and went pale. "Where did you get these?" she whispered. "Your husband is thorough," Richard said simply. Patricia closed the folder. "We need a brief recess." I stood in the hallway outside the conference room while the recess stretched out. After a few minutes, the door opened and Melissa came out alone. She looked different from the woman who had stood in our bedroom that Tuesday morning. Smaller somehow, quieter. "Marcus," her voice was soft. "Can we just talk, just the two of us?" "We are talking," I said, "through our lawyers." "I mean really talk, the way we used to." "There's nothing to say." "There is everything to say." Her voice broke slightly. "I made a mistake, I know that, I know it completely, but we had 8 years, Marcus, 8 real years, and I know we can." "You didn't make a mistake," I said. I kept my voice even, but I felt each word clearly. "A mistake is something that happens once by accident and you stop immediately. You made a choice. Over and over for 6 months you made that choice." "I was lonely." "So was I," something sharpened in my voice then, not cruelty, but honesty, the kind that can't be softened. "I was lonely every single night I spent in a motel room in the middle of nowhere, missing you, looking forward to coming home. I was lonely and I was exhausted and I was doing it for us. But I didn't cheat." She started crying again. I know, Marcus, I'm sorry, I'm so deeply sorry." "I know you are," I said. "I believe you, but I also know you're sorry because you got caught, and those are not the same thing." I walked back inside. Like this video, if you've ever had to walk away from someone you still loved, because you loved yourself enough to know you deserved better, and share it with someone who needs to hear this story today. The final settlement took 4 months. Melissa fought hard for the house. Her attorney made arguments about contribution and emotional investment, and the years Melissa had spent maintaining the home while I traveled. Richard countered methodically, presenting the evidence of adultery and the documented financial deception alongside it. He argued that Melissa had violated the foundation of the marriage and should not be positioned to benefit from its dissolution. The judge agreed. I kept the house. Melissa received her car, her retirement account, and her share of the joint savings. There was no alimony. The divorce was finalized on a Thursday afternoon. I signed the papers in Richard's office, set down the pen, and sat quietly for a moment. "How do you feel?" Richard asked. "Lighter," I said. And I meant it completely. Not happy, that would come later in its own time and its own way, but lighter. Like I had been carrying something heavy for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like not to. In the months that followed, I sold the house. Every room held a memory that felt less like warmth and more like weight, and I was ready to stop carrying it. I bought a loft closer to the city, exposed brick, tall windows that let the morning light pour in, a space that felt entirely mine in a way the house never had, not really. Not anymore. I kept working, I kept traveling, but I started making different choices about which jobs to take and which ones to pass on. I gave myself permission to say no when a project would pull me away for too long. Life got quieter, simpler, more honest. I started to heal. I went on a few dates over the following months, nothing that became serious. I wasn't ready for serious, but I was healing, and healing is its own kind of forward motion, even when it doesn't look like much from the outside. Then, about a year after that Tuesday morning, the Tuesday that divided my life so cleanly into before and after, I was sitting in a coffee shop near my new place on a slow weekend morning. Good coffee, a book I had been meaning to read for a long time, the easy quiet of a life that was genuinely mine. I looked up and saw Melissa. She was across the room with someone I didn't recognize, not Derek, someone new. She looked different, thinner, and carrying something in her expression that I could only describe as tired. She looked up at the same moment, and our eyes met. For a second or two, something hung in the air between us. I thought she might come over. I thought about what I would say if she did. She looked away, and I realized something sitting there in that coffee shop with my cup of coffee and my book and my quiet Saturday morning. I didn't feel anything. Not anger, not sadness, not the echo of the love I had once had for her, not even the bitterness I had expected to carry for much longer than I apparently did. Just nothing. The particular nothing that means something has truly finished. She was a person I used to know, someone who had been a very significant part of my life for a time and was now simply someone else moving through the world on a different path. I finished my coffee, I left. People ask me sometimes, friends, colleagues, even strangers once the story gets around the way stories do, whether I regret coming home early that day, whether I wish I had stayed in Denver for those extra 2 days, whether ignorance might have been easier to live with than the truth. The answer is always the same. No, because the truth, no matter how painful it is to walk into, no matter how much it hurts to carry in those first hours and days and weeks, is always better than a lie. Always. A lie is a foundation that will eventually give way. It may hold for months or even years, but it will give way and everything built on top of it will come down with it. The truth is a floor you can actually stand on, even when it hurts, even when it changes everything. Those 2 wine glasses saved my life. Not because they ended my marriage, though they did, and I believe now that it needed to end. They saved my life because they showed me clearly and honestly who I was married to, and more importantly, they showed me who I was. I was not the kind of man who would quietly accept betrayal to avoid the discomfort of being alone. I was not the kind of man who would shrink himself down to fit inside someone else's dishonesty. I was not the kind of man who would choose a comfortable lie over a difficult truth. I was the kind of man who would walk away from something broken, even when it was painful, even when it was frightening, even when the future looked completely uncertain, and build something real, something honest, something worth actually having. And that is exactly what I did. What do you think happens next for Marcus? Would you have handled any part of this differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this story meant something to you, if it reminded you of your own strength or gave you something to think about, share it with someone who might need to hear it today. If you've ever found the courage to walk away from something that was hurting you, even when staying would have been so much easier, this story is for you. Comment the words, "I walked away," so I know you're out there. Hit subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss a new story. Because sometimes the worst day of your life turns out to be the very first day of your freedom. And sometimes all it takes to finally see the truth is 2 wine glasses sitting on a nightstand.